Hello, welcome to the Low-Code Campfire. This is the edition for Friday, August 4th, 2023, episode number 109. Today we're going to talk some about dark corners of the Plantain App product, but also anything else you want to talk about. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plantain App, and Patrick Anderson is also on the call. He's a technical success manager for Plantain App. This is an event we do every week on Friday at this hour, and it's a time to get together to get to know each other as a community and to share techniques, challenges, experiences with the Plantain App product. So everyone's welcome, and do bring something to show or ask, please. We record all these. They're out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/PlantainApp, so do subscribe to that. We run an agenda that draws from these topics. We do introductions for anyone who's new to the group, and then we go around the campfire. We always start with first call. We talk about a variety of other things as the topics lead us. And then after an hour or so, we go into our afterglow segment. So we'll turn off the recording, raise a virtual beverage, and enjoy chatting with each other for a little while longer. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell. Very few guidelines, be nice, and if you've got noise going on behind you, hit the mute button. You can submit questions and topics in advance. People rarely do that, but when you do, I put it on the agenda and we talk about them. So you can use that QR code or the links in the emails that we send to you. So I will say hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Jerry, I'm always impressed that you continue to survive your extracurricular activities.
Well, thank you, Dale, for your encouragement. But I'm off. I've been off for a week, and I'm off for 2 more weeks. So it's all Plantain App, heads down, go to work for a little while. So I'm in a pretty safe place right now.
Well, good deal, and glad you're with us today.
I thought Dale was talking about his customer conversion.
Yeah, well, anytime you're doing customer conversion, I personally think that's more dangerous than motocross anyway. I really do. It's, trying to juggle everybody's lives and keep everybody happy at the same time is it's problematic, no doubt. But we're getting there. We're working it all out.
Good deal.
Well,
okay. Oh,
I guess we can say that using Plantain App doesn't risk life and limb, though, does it? In general.
How would I answer that? The only way, not directly, but indirectly, if your client gets angry, then yeah, it could happen. So yeah, I've never been hurt by falling off of my computer yet. Okay, so there's that.
There you go.
all right, so we jump right into first call. And hello, Don, I see you jumped in here as well. Did anybody bring a first call?
Good morning.
I believe this is your on week, Don.
Oh no, I didn't prepare.
Anyone with something you'd like to jump right into? Great. I'm gonna start singing. No, I have a couple of prepared topics and maybe some encouragement. Talking about a little bit about feature requests. So I just wanted to give heads up that Patrick and I are reviewing this list for quick wins, things that would not take an inordinate amount of effort, would make your lives better, and hopefully we can get some of those incorporated into the product.
And I just wanted to add, Dale, that just for everyone as an FYI, we're doing that in order of votes. So up your vote count.
That is true. Create more identities and click the up arrow, yes. Or
Go over real quick how one votes.
Sure, let's do that. I wanted to jump into feature requests anyway, so let's take a look. And let's start with I had completed this one. This one was not a technical one, and I just missed it. I have no idea why I didn't jump on this, but Matthew had asked if we could have a community version of the JavaScript API Google Sheet, which allowing editing, and I mean, there's no reason not to create a public version of that other than it might get defaced. So I did that this morning. So there is and let me put these, let's see if these links will go on the chat here. Oh, no, the links didn't go. So now we'll put them here independently. So there's our existing Google API sheet. I've just opened up commenting on that, and that's that link. And then on this one, it's a copy of it. So let me put that one as well. This is a copy of it, and so long as we don't get discovered as having an unprotected worksheet out there when somebody posting ugly pictures or nasty comments, we'll leave it up there. So if you make edits, we'll take a look at those, but I would prefer that we see comments on our original so that I can just incorporate them in and when I see them come up. So hopefully that'll make things a little easier for somebody. But to Don's question, there is a feature request page, and the features are listed out. Let me jump there. So all of the different things that are that have been requested over time, together with whether or not they're what their status is, and we need a nice way to eliminate completed things, because there's some of those that are actually completed. But you can sort it by votes, and when you go into one, oops, not there. Here, when you go into one, there's this thumbs up icon, and like I can click on it, it adds my vote, or click again and it takes my vote away. So that's how you vote on things. You find them and vote on them. So you can post them in there, and then from time to time in this setting, we say, you can lobby, right? So anybody who wants to talk about one and ask for more votes from the community, you can do that. So we can take on some of that today if you'd like. But our task has been to go through and we internally, not just Patrick and I, we've been talking about quick wins. It's nice that there are some things that we could do in the product that wouldn't take a lot of effort, but would make your lives better. Some things that would make your lives better, but could have risk or impact to the product we can't take on under the quick win banner. But these things that are quick wins, we'd love to be able to deliver some of these to you. So we're identifying those. I've made my list. I'm all the way down to the 5s. Patrick, I don't know how far you got, but we're going to make our lists and compare, and where there's overlap, we'll start pushing for them through the development team. So questions on that process, or anybody want to take on any lobbying for something that they particularly like and think we should draw attention to?
Yeah, I think all the ones that are started by Mark Buelsing, those should get priority, I think.
Well, let's put that in the hopper and see how it comes out.
Hey now.
Hey, well, he asked. Hey, I think that's great, Dale. I'm really happy you're working on those. That's awesome. And I like the one you already did.
You know, anything that doesn't involve development, now it becomes within my power. It's just a little bit of paperwork. I can do that stuff. But okay, we can come back to that if somebody decides writes up a new one while we're talking about something else and want to add it in. But again, the immediate focus is on quick wins. There was even one in there by this guy, Patrick Anderson, and I even thought that qualified. So what was this one? I think this one was kind of a cool one. Here's one that I think really should be upvoted. We have our Plant an App cog menu or gear menu that appears on Page Builder, and being able to open things in a new tab. I always like working in a new tab. If you see,
but you haven't voted for it yet, Dale.
I wanted to demonstrate. It's nothing personal. I wanted to demonstrate the upvote process.
There you go. Yeah.
So this one is, we have this icon here, and we have the ability to open it, and it comes out in a slide out form, a tray form, which is nice. But if you're doing more than just a couple of edits, having it be able to open in a more permanent way with a new tab. So just having an icon here, we obviously know how to call that and create a new. So pretty small change that I think would make people's lives better, rather than having to put the page into edit mode to find the pencil. While we're talking about that, our first quick win that we already spent some time documenting was a suggestion. I think it was by that guy, Mark Buelsing, but I could be remembering wrong. But the idea was that this particular menu, instead of just showing these generic gears, that we have some kind of icons that distinguish between forms and listings and tabs, and that they have some kind of order to them grouped together, so that it's easy to identify as you get more and more things on a page, what they are, and maybe finding them easier. So that one already has been created. Now we got to get development to agree. Yes, that's an easy thing to do. Great, you guys are quiet.
Thank you, Dale.
Oh, I've got something if we're at a breaking point.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, and the thing that you just did where you put the JavaScript calls or lists or whatever up on a place where we can all get at them, kind of triggered the thought. I've got an HTML module. Somebody wrote a horrendous amount of code with lots and lots of divs, and right in the middle of it, there should be a form. And what they did is they copied the file from another website that was an old WordPress website. And so there's a chunk of code, and they didn't know any better. And they tried to make they use CSS to try to make the form look good, but they didn't realize that you can't just throw a form in the middle of a DNN page. So what I wanted to do was to just yank all of that code out, but leave all of the divs and the various nesting things alone, and just put one line in there that basically says, pop up a Plan an App form. Because we do it very nicely in the pages that you build, where you've got if you want to put a new record in, you click new and boom, the form pops up. And that's because you've got an action that says, go pop up the form that's on the page. So I see how that all works. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to just write whatever code that I can without involving Plan an App in the HTML module that says, go pop open the Plan an App form that's on this page. Does that make sense? And if so, you know how to do it? Or can you tell me how to do it?
Yes. Are you going to an example?
Well, is it on this page?
It is. Yep, it's there.
That's it, right?
That's it.
Fantastic. So
you have to. So your form has to be on the page, and you have to make
Right.
sure that it's a open and pop up mode, and then you get the ID of it. And if it has any parameters that are needed to initiate the form, you just pass those in. And the example of how to pass in the parameters is a good example is on on line 21, I think, Dale, is that, or it shows, you just pass in parameters like that. You put them in curly brackets.
Fantastic. Yep. So the MID, module ID, is the ID of the form that's on the page. I don't think I need any other. So refresh true. I suppose that's to refresh the form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. Fantastic. So where again is this? You made it public viewing, and I know that it's
If you
in
look
the,
on your chat,
yeah, it's in the chat, right? You were, and of course, after I leave and forget to save the chat, I can't get at it. So where is it in the general? Is it in the knowledge dot plan an app?
currently,
Plan an app?
I just did this before the meeting, so no. This is on the feature request, where feature request number 70, create a community version. I've just added as a comment here. So there is no public posting of this yet.
Got it. Well, I'll grab it for now. I was just wondering where you might think to put it so that the next time I wonder if there's a JavaScript that you can use to do this, that I would be able to do it, find it.
I'm gonna write that on a piece of paper.
Sounds like maybe it would be good under learn dot or something, somewhere in the
Yes.
list of
Yes. And sadly, this is obviously just an internal. This was an internal tool that we made external. It's not pretty. It just shows us how. So ideally, these things would be in the documentation, but making it available here to this core developer group was a matter of convenience. So we'll find out whether we can actually put it out.
And another note that I think we've talked about this before at some point on this call, but I want to make sure everybody knows that the PAA API that was referenced in column C doesn't yet exist. It's our plan that we're making there, but we don't have the PAA API yet.
Right. And
just because I'm fairly new at dropping these things in the middle of HTML modules, all I need to do is write in the place that I want to do it, switch over to source, and then write the script tag, that line with my parameters filled in, and end script, and I'm done. That's all I need to do.
You might want to put it into a link. Isn't there an example of? Don't we have that in the actually in the form?
Oh, like an on-click?
Yeah. Do it as an
Okay.
on-click, yeah. So that you have a UI for it. And I feel like that we have an example somewhere in the but I might be wrong. I can't remember.
probably in the pop-up section.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yep.
So at that point, it would be href equals blah, on click equals return that line.
Yep.
Got it. And then I could dress it up as a button or whatever.
So hang up right there if you would. Those examples are good for opening a form, but they don't have an example of opening a form with parameters. It'd be great
True.
to add that to that section right there.
It would.
It seems like a quick win that should get a lot of votes.
Yeah, I keep coming back to this. I know that these notes are here, and I keep coming back and I go, oh darn, right, there's no parameters here. I have a little cheat sheet where I go look it up then. However, now that you allowed us to edit the API sheet, I could put an example, or any of us could put an example of adding parameters right to it, although it's probably already there, isn't it? Can't add it here where we're looking.
Well, I was actually just noticing when we were talking about that, it's not on the on that one. So that's why I was pointing to line 20, where it does show an example of passing in parameters. And that's how. But yeah, it would be good to put that there. So we have a good example of exactly how the parameters are passed in.
Let's see. So this is the one that can accept comments. Let me go to the other one here. And this is the one that's the public version. I am going to add a tab here at the bottom, which would be anybody who wants to add how do you use this thing in the helpful usage notes, feel free to. If you find some success and you want to share something, leave tracks for the next guy, please do. So glad we could point you to the at least in the direction. If that doesn't get you where you want to go, we'd be happy to you can create a support ticket. We'll find a way to help you out.
Perfect. Thank you.
With all that you just mentioned, you were talking about that you got a bunch of HTML inside of a sounds like a text module, an HTML module.
Right.
Are you familiar with some of the tools that structure HTML, which I find now that I've mentioned it, now I'm on the spot to remember the name, but there's some nice HTML tools that let you interact with it kind of visually, and I find it to be helpful. What's that?
I had that exact problem just yesterday. I may have seen it from you some other time, but it was a codebeautify.org does it. HTML tidy, that sounds similar as well. You know how I've got a guy that did some code for me and grabbed some WordPress pages and moved the content of it over and basically just dropped the entire contents page into one HTML module in DNN. And so there are, the multi-columns and things. So he went and created his own styles and classes and all of this to do it. I'm going to have to probably rework it, but that was a problem to try to read through, because he had nested upon nested upon nested divs. It was a real mess to try to figure out just where I can break these pieces up into multiple HTML modules and then arrange them differently. So this kind of tool is an important tool to use, because it'll indent the various divs properly, and then you can line them up and where you can split things up.
Absolutely. And that's why yeah. So like this particular one has the tool to indent text. You can also compress it when you're done, but you can get multiple formats of expansion. So just mentioning that there's some nice tools available, and probably there's many even better ones, but this and Code Beautify I use all the time. So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's close out of that one. We've got a person or two join. We're still on first call, so if you want to jump in, you got an issue, it's a great time to do that. We've talked about feature requests. I had promoted this as a little bit about dark corners, that there are areas within the product that we don't get to very often, kind of all out along the edges where the light doesn't shine. And Patrick found one of these this week and asked if it would qualify as dark corners. And so I told him I would promote him and give him the mic. So did you want to talk about this one at all, Patrick?
Sure. Yeah. Let me share my screen for a second here, and yeah. And I suspect that maybe this is something that are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Here? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
API. Yeah.
And I was going to say, I suspect maybe this is something that some of you are already familiar with, but I was tasked by a client they wanted to see, they have a lot of APIs, and they give out keys to specific people, and they wanted to learn more about the usage. And so I started diving into it some, and I discovered a few things, and so I'll just share these. One that I discovered was the and if you I'm not able to see that here, but maybe, yes. So these tokens are very useful, and I'll show the use of those in just a second. But there's these tokens, API key name and value, that will capture the key that was used to access. And just so everybody's on the same page, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but when I talk about an API key, I'm talking about the security, and if you can restrict an API to specific keys that are defined under the security tab in APIs. And when you define a security key, then you have those keys to choose from to give access to an API. I have three defined, and I've given access to this API to all three of those keys that I have defined. So the usage case here is that so let's say I gave one of these keys to 3 different parties that are using the same API, and I want to know who's using it and how often. So all that data is tracked automatically, and but also if I wanted to do something else with this data other than just the table where it's automatically tracked, I can use those tokens. So let me just demo
And I'm sorry, can you show me where those tokens are again, please, Patrick?
Where you can see the tokens?
Yeah, under the help.
Yeah, so I'm mousing over the access information icon, and we see that
So
we have the API key name token. Yeah.
API key name, API key value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm just going to and let me show you what I did to use those tokens. I'm using them to just do an admin alert. So that's all I'm doing, is showing the key name and the key value that was used. So I'm going to go into an incognito window here, and hopefully I still have these on my clipboard from earlier. Yep, there we go. And I'm going to use key 1 first. There's my key. And I'm just going to run each of those keys real quick here. There's key 2. Oh, I didn't press enter to run it. There we go. And then this one here. Okay, and this API is not really returning anything. I'm just using it for our example processing here. So let me get rid of that. And now I'm going to take a look at the logs. And you can see here that that key 1 was used, and key 2 was used, and the one called Patrick test was used. So now, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just by way of explanation for anyone who's not familiar with it, you can test an API through the interface, but it doesn't require the key. If you had tried to run that without a key, it would have thrown an error. When you went to an incognito, it doesn't know you anymore.
Right.
And so now you have to pass whatever the security is that's set up on in this case, it needs an API key. So it would throw an error instead of running had you not provided a good key.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so now if I go into SQL Console, the other place where this data is stored, and this is automatic, this has nothing to do with the tokens I was just showing, is in the, and Dale had showed that in the presentation a few minutes ago, but it's in this plant and app audit date DNN API endpoint table. And this automatically stores when keys are used to access specific APIs. And you can assign a key to more than one API. And so you can, and all I've done here is I've joined that. So this stores the API key ID, just the numeric ID in this table. And so I joined it to the API keys table so that I can actually get the friendly name, which is probably going to be the most useful thing for you. So, if you were giving out an API key, the friendly name would be something that identifies the party to whom you've given the key, would be a good, rule to follow, I think.
Yeah, you
Yes.
get to assign that.
Right, yes.
As you create the key.
So if I run this, we can see that, so the Patrick test one, the execution time was just a few moments ago, and then you can see going down that I've tested these a few times as well.
So then any kind of analysis that you could do in SQL, like grouping them, so you could count min date, max date, so you could see if a key had been used recently, that kind of thing.
Yep, and do counts.
Or pull out chart.js and do a nice graph.
Sure.
That's another episode, right?
So hopefully some of you were aware of this table. I wasn't, and it was precisely what our customer needed, and it was all the data was already there.
Patrick, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Did you happen to learn what the retention period is on these keys, on this API usage?
I didn't, but I know that that the data is so this customer uses the API's keys a lot, and there were 146,000 records in place there, going back to 2021.
So I'm going to postulate that it's possible that they don't that they don't get cleared, and there might be a point of maintenance that if you had a high usage, and you might need to clear this from time to time after your audit period, and we might take an action item to look at how we can. This issue comes up with other things, like, for example, in the search tool, there's a or even, let's say, automation that we log activity in certain tables, and then from time to time those need to be cleared out, and we have some policies about how those get cleared out. I'm not sure what they are at the moment, but I'm not sure there is a policy related to this one.
Quick question on this.
Sure.
The maybe it's too early in the morning for me, but I would use various services out there, and then they would get me an API key and I would store it, and I get that. But you're saying that your application is providing an API key to somebody else, so your code is providing a service to somebody and it needs an API key? I'm not sure what the use of the, why are you doing API keys?
So under security, it's so you can give access to somebody to an API without making you can require an API key be used. Otherwise, a API is just public and anybody can access it. If you require an API key to be used, then the key has to be passed in the URL. As you saw when I did the incognito window, I did the parameter API key equals. That has to be available there or in the headers. Plant and app automatically checks both the request headers or the request body to see if the API key exists in either place. And if it exists, then it allows the access to the API, and you have complete control over this. So if I go issue new key here, it automatically fills in a GUID for me. I can edit that if I want, but it automatically gives me a GUID, and then I can specify a friendly name, and then you are in control of providing this to whomever the party is that you want to give access to the API.
And
Yeah, I certainly get that. I'm wondering,
Okay.
are you using an API at all? What's the, I understand the mechanism of it. What's the use case for the API? I mean, that you log in. I mean, that's
to share. I mean, the use case for the client that I just was referring to that's using it so heavily is to share data with third parties. That's their use case. So that the data can easily be accessed.
Oh, I see. Okay. So instead of them logging in and seeing it like with regular web pages, they've got a process.
They actually pull the data down into one of their own systems.
Got it. Interesting.
So it's we kind of started in the middle of the discussion on the assumption that you understood what the API section of the product is, and for anybody who doesn't know, the idea is that you can publish your own API endpoints that allow people to interact with your system. And I say people, programmatically interact. So you can create a get API endpoint that you give the name to, and then if you tell somebody about that, they can use the URL that you give to them and do a get and retrieve information from your system. The API is a very it allows you to publish any type of endpoint, a get or a post or a delete or whatever you want to do. And our product automatically, and Patrick, perhaps you can show one, when you create an entity, it automatically creates the APIs that allow people to use it. So if you open those endpoints up, so Patrick has a thing, an entity called FAA application, and our code automatically creates a post and a get and a put and a delete that lets, if you were to tell somebody about this endpoint and give them security, they could get an endpoint, they could get a application or create an application or delete one. So programmatically being able to access it, and sounds to me like it would be a really great topic if we've done it, it's been a long time, so it might be a good cafe for endpoints.
Hey, Dale, Jerry here. I'd love to be a part of that one. I think API Endpoint might be one of my top 2 or 3 favorite PAA modules ever known to man. And one of our use cases with it is, in short, we had external company write a mobile app, and the mobile app programmers and myself did not want to touch the data organically. So you can imagine what I did. I created all the APIs to feed the mobile app just what it's allowed. And so the mobile app programmers they don't have to really have credentials to our SQL server and you're giving them too much power. We only we just feed that mobile app with the API. And the short version of that is, if you had a third-party company or friend that needed data out of your system to go into their website, that's what API Endpoint would be super powerful for. And along with the API keys and other methods of securing it, you can integrate your website to somebody else's website and remain in a safe environment. And
in that, Jerry, I have a question. In that scenario you were talking about, do they use the API data as the live data, or are they pulling the data down and pulling it from their own database?
I like to call it real enough time, meaning
Okay.
they pull the data. They may not necessarily pull the data on every screen load,
Okay.
but where it's required, I ask them to do that. And so, yeah, it is, I mean, it really is real time. If there's some
Mhm.
numbers that need to be updated, they may have to swipe down or whatever it is to refresh the screen to get the new numbers. So, but you could just imagine they're programming in whatever language an Android or an Apple phone works in, and they're just calling APIs to populate screens and make it look pretty on the end.
Mhm.
But it's actually my efforts back at the API endpoint in Planta app that's doing all the SQL queries and driving out the data and whatever's allowed for them to have and when they need it. So I have Dale, I have a section of in my API endpoint that's dedicated just to the mobile app, and there's probably over 100 APIs in there, and all secured. And so it's pretty neat. But another great reason that API endpoint, for me at least, and I see that's exactly what our PAA programmers are doing, is to create so you don't have to duplicate code. You can write an API endpoint inside your own website that does something that might be redundant. And then you just have your action form or action grid, call that API endpoint whenever you need to do it. And that code is sitting in one central location. So
Mhm.
I use it for that a lot as well, among all the other things. But
Yeah,
it's not
I like,
uncommon. Go ahead.
and one of my favorite uses of APIs is along the same lines. I like to use it to as a way to add dynamic content on in forms and stuff like that, because you can update things by pulling fresh data subsequent to initialization, by pulling fresh
Mhm.
data via an API.
Yeah, Dale, back to your point, and maybe we call it an advanced API video would be a fun project to have a few of us jump in on and offer up our suggestions on someday soon.
And along those lines, I will point out too that there is in the Low-Code Academy, academy.plantanapp.com, there is a course, a video, and some words that focus specifically on API endpoints, and so that's something that's immediate. There are a lot of great features built into API endpoints, including the ability to cache. So the performance kinds of things that you were talking that were implied in our discussion there a second ago, those can be taken care of as well. So lots of good stuff that's built in.
We have hands raised.
Oh,
Jim and Ben.
Let's start with Jim.
Yeah, but Ben was first, but
I didn't see it,
I was just
sorry.
going to Don, question. I use it to split my front end from my back end. I mean, I have two sites, a front end site and I have a back end site where I have data work being done, and sort of like Jerry's mobile app, I treat my front end site as sort of the mobile app. It's calling the APIs to get data from the back end, and I can make it look pretty without breaking it. And then the other thing it lets me do is, on a new project I'm working on, is I'm interfacing off to a third-party site on the back end and moving data about. The client in the front end doesn't need to know where the data is coming from or not. All that interfacing is done on a back end Plantain app site.
Good case. Ben, you want to play through?
I'm gonna try. I'm actually traveling right now, so hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right. So I have a couple of different use cases for API, but they do definitely come in extremely handy. For example, one of my biggest cases in using APIs is when I have pages that will have code in there to refresh data periodically. So I'll use JavaScript on a page, and let's say, for example, a dashboard. Every 15 seconds, it needs to update the values on the dash cards. So I will create an API that basically pulls and designs the entire dashboard, all the dash cards. And every 15 seconds, the Java code will just call that API and wait for that data to return. As soon as it returns, it just updates the information on the screen. So that's a really nice use case that I've used quite often. It's not just Dash cards, it's for anything that, like I said, on a JavaScript side is timed. The second use case that I have is integrating with a third-party website that I don't have the source code for, but our administration wanted certain cosmetic changes to the site. So hide certain areas, lock certain buttons from being able to be pressed, remove certain items from drop-down menus that are, obsolete, that we don't typically use, things like that. I can't change the code and the behavior and the logic of the application, but I can make cosmetic changes after the page finishes loading. So what I do is, using these APIs, I can set up rules and details as to what the code, the JavaScript code that I embed on the page will do. It just pulls that through an API through my website, pulls down that information, and that script will just go ahead and make whatever changes based off of the data that it returns back from the API. So that's a second use case that's really useful and used quite often. And then the last thing is similar to what Jim just said. I do have one situation where I have a help desk, third-party help desk, that I am trying to make changes to, but it's on another network that is inaccessible directly by the website or the SQL server that is the main one running. So it's a completely separated, completely different network or whatnot. So there's no real way to communicate the information between the two. So what I ended up doing was I created a website on the same network as the help desk, on the same server, created an API call because that server can reach the database. So it's almost kind of like a bridge. So I can basically traverse across an entire network, something that's completely different, and still be able to insert or retrieve data off of that other system. So just a couple of use cases.
Absolutely. There are a ton of things you can do with APIs, and just anytime that you're talking in terms of it's not a person, but it's a computer that needs to do the action, that should at least come to mind as a possibility. Should I be using an API? So cool. So pointing out that the within our documentation at learn.plantonapp.com, there is an overview that talks about APIs, and it's certainly a good place to get started. So that's it's all goes off of dark corners. So glad that that topic came up, Patrick. That's a good one.
Cool.
So I have a question for Ben's comment.
Yes, please.
Ben, did you say you're actually pulling the HTML response of a formatted page from another site and then modifying it before you display it to your users? Is that?
Not taking HTML from somewhere else and modifying it. For example, on my website, I have an API that JavaScript that calls a local API every 15 seconds. So the JavaScript basically reruns every 15 seconds, calls that API. That API will actually gather a whole bunch of information from different sources, actually different databases, a total of 4 different systems. And then it builds the HTML, the dash cards. It completely builds them out with all the information that's needed, and then feeds that back. And I just take that direct HTML and I dump it into a div, and it's already pre-formatted. It just displays. I update that div with the new HTML.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I heard a magic way of reading somebody else's web page, turning off buttons and stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, not. I mean, you can't remotely change someone else's web page. You still have to write script and put it directly on there. But I do situations where I do web scraping as well off of another website, where through a Razor script, I basically read a website and I pull the data out.
Thank you.
Okay, so I had picked out one, and it gives me a chance to talk about the Campfire website a little bit, but not that one. Here it is. So anyone who's not part of who is part of this call and not part of the Campfire website, campfire.plantonapp.com, you're welcome to join. Just shoot me your email and I will add you to it. But this is a site where we share small pieces of solutions, and one of them that I believe I had published some time ago. Let's see, have I timed out here? It's slow. Okay, here we go. So one of them was about Search Boost. You can use the search tool within Planton app and in the interface, but if you wanted to programmatically get search results out of your site, maybe offer it to some other site to be able to search your site and to retrieve results, or use it internally to be able to do something with the results in an intelligent way. So this is a way to do a search boost call. So if we look at this contribution, and if you were to dig into it, you'd see exactly what happens. But a long time ago, I contributed this get search boost content button. So when you, any topic at all, and in my case, I just have the word JSON here to search. And it returns back a JSON object with having searched our site for JSON, and you can see it's highlighting all that. If I were to say any other term in search, we'd find that search is active. So what I learned this week is that, well, let's take a look at this code. There is a form for this, this get button. Get search boost content. It has two actions, one that does assert the request, the other that just updates the form so we can see the result. But we do a server request call right back to this website. And here's the form of it. You say that you want to do a search boost API search get, and you pass it information like the behavior ID, which is specific to search boost. So it's doing behavior 1, which is indexing of everything on our site. And then we're passing the query in and saying we want up to 20 results. So that's done by way of a post onto a particular URL. And so this kind of documents exactly how to do that and get a JSON result back. And then it's putting it in an output token named result, which happens to be a static text field on my screen. So that one query, that one server request goes out and gets the answer and puts it back onto the screen. So that's that was what was there previously. I've added a new button here, and it's virtually identical, but because it's still doing a server request, but there was an endpoint here that I wasn't aware of before. The other one does runs the get endpoint. Not to be too confusing, it's actually a post method, but it runs the get endpoint. This one, there's another endpoint called advanced, and it just does a slightly different type of search. And so if we use that button, it's going to still return the same kind of thing, but there are some operators that are talked about, and you can see them in this article, but it supports the use of plus and minus operators. So we can look for something that doesn't include the word, let's find something here that it'll remove entries with the word iterate. So that starts to remove content. So if you need to do a search, you can use the advanced version and get it to pay attention to these minuses and pluses. So just kind of a nuanced thing that I happened into this week. Any questions about search boost in general or endpoints in specific? Mine wasn't anywhere near as interesting as Patrick's. But it's out there on campfire.plantainapp.com if you want to see it. Okay, that's the end of the prepared topics. So we have 4 minutes. Anybody with a last call?
Dark corner or ghost story.
For the uninitiated, a ghost story is something that you spent too long on hunting down.
Yeah, I have one. Actually, this was my request on the Public Help Center there, and thanks to Dale and Ben for responding. Anyway, my request was returning a 500 error, so it technically couldn't find the according to it, it couldn't find the form or something. So what I ended up doing was rebuilding the form from scratch. But what I ultimately found out was that the issue in my case had to do with the fact that I was trying to update a user avatar, so the user picture, and it that was seemingly causing it to kind of throw up all over the place. And as it turned out, once I eliminated that, everything else started to work. I have not yet figured out exactly why it didn't work in the first place. So that's kind of next step in this process, trying to understand why exactly it failed. So that took me a fair amount of time, I must say.
I'm trying to remember if I have. It seems like I have an example of changing. This is profile information, right? Do you know if you were trying to use, what kind of action you were using to change the avatar?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll be able to pull that up.
While Matt's looking that up, I'll put a plug in for Patrick's office hours. You know,
Thank you.
I bumped my head several times I got with Patrick and he gave me some ideas to go chase some things down. Specifically one of, I was trying to use the keepalive.aspx and I thought, well, maybe it just doesn't work with keeping a plant and app site alive, and Patrick said it should. He was surprised it wasn't. And to Patrick, it's much easier. It works much better if you type the right URL into the keep alive, and you're keeping the right site alive.
So what?
Thanks for the office hours.
So Dale, I'm not sure what exact question you were asking, but what was working for me initially was the single file upload to choose the image. And then I, wrote it out and so on and so forth. Then I updated the profile with the field value of the, let's see. Yeah,
So
update the profile.
Update user profile.
Yeah, and it was working fine in the first person. So when that user was actually changing their own profile, it worked fine. But then what I tried to do is then layer that on to kind of an admin function where they could manage someone else's profile. And that's when it started to fail on me. So at the moment, I removed that capability for the admin until I figure out what exactly was breaking it.
Did you try doing load user before?
Oh yeah,
Well,
everything, all the updates, like the rest of the updates to the profile worked. I did the load user, all that stuff, and it all worked fine.
So,
but go ahead.
The update user profile action has a user identifier there. That's what I've
Yes.
used in the past too. If it's an admin sort of thing, I use the user identifier field there to identify the user that's being updated.
I of course did that because the rest of the form properly updates the correct user. The user, I tried different iterations of the user identifier to see if that was the problem. It wasn't the issue. I tried email. I stored the user ID in a hidden field and used that field name. All of that worked to update everything, but when I tried the user avatar, it failed. So probably something in the way I've configured it, but kind of TBD. That may be an upcoming office hours thing. I'm not sure.
Okay, interesting. I haven't happened to try to wander into that area before, so. I think I have tried to change it for myself. Now I'm yeah, I'll have to go look. There's a test that I do that this sounds familiar. I'll look for it if I find it. Matt, I'll
Yeah.
If I find something useful, I'll post.
So what I, just as an aside, I also, for when someone is updating their own profile, which then the image works, the avatar image works, I then also added the thumbnail to the routine to take ginormous, 4 megabyte selfies and shrink them down. And that seems to work pretty well. So that's all good.
Okay, good deal. So that's our hour. Good session. I am going to call it there. We'll get together again next week and have the opportunity to say things about Patrick. I think he's going to be off next week, so we can
try to be nice.
Yeah, that's rule 1 on the thing, right? Do not and mute. Okay, but thank you guys. It's always good to see you and have you as part of the Low-Code Campfire. We'll see you next week.